Hi there, my name is Zoe Hyde, and I'm pleased to be speaking with you today about Rebus Ink. Rebus Ink is a project of the Rebus Foundation, and we are funded by the Mellon Foundation. So I'll be taking you through today the problem area that we are looking at, some of the research that we've been doing into it, the tool itself that's in development, and then a little about why we are building Rebus Ink in the ways that we are. So to start, I want to make sure that we understand what a research workflow is, because what we have found is that research workflows are not well supported. But as I say, they're also not well understood. So let's start there. When people think about a research workflow, there's no guarantee the same thing comes to mind for all of us. Often people have a good grasp of the fact that if you're doing research, you're going to be collecting a lot of sources, you're going to be reading those sources, and then there's kind of this mystery process that happens, and then there's an output at the end. And it's the mystery process that we're really interested in. So through our research, we've found very clearly that research is pretty much synonymous with finding stuff, with discoverability. That's common across a lot of different disciplines, different levels of experience. That's kind of the piece that's best understood and best supported, which by no means is to say that it's easy. Certainly with the proliferation of digital content, discoverability has enormous challenges in it, but it's at least well understood. Once you kind of start going beyond that, though, what we've heard time and time again is that researchers are putting together these systems to manage their sources, manage the work that they're doing, and they don't tend to be very stable. We haven't met a single researcher who is totally confident that their system is working for them exactly as they need it to. And that's the best case scenario, is that people think, okay, it's maybe not perfect, but it works. And there is a lot else out there that is not working at all, that's creating a lot of frustration and chaos in an already challenging kind of work. And part of this, these challenges are that the existing tools available to researchers are often not built for purpose, and they're disconnected. So this could be as simple as, maybe finding a really good PDF reading interface, but when you go to put your notes somewhere, it's not clear where they go. You can maybe export them, it's not sure what format that will be, and that kind of creates a new challenge. So once you have your notes, what do you do with them? And critically, as we've been speaking with researchers, it's very clear that there's not good education around this set of skills. Often we hear stories that someone's been lucky enough to have a mentor or a professor who's been able to pass on some good practices. Often that's in the form of tools. Zotero gets a lot of shout outs. But if you don't have the luck to come across someone like that, then people are left figuring it out on their own. Now, there's an argument we've heard that that's the point, that's part of becoming a researcher, but to us, that creates a real risk of isolating and leaving behind people who could otherwise make really great contributions to research, because they haven't had the luck or the support to create this kind of process for themselves. And I have a theory on that as well, and this is something I'm hoping to pursue further with research. But when you take that sink or swim attitude, I think anyone who has an understanding of academia should hopefully by now know that it is not an equal chance that anyone will sink or swim. It is not based purely on their capacity to develop as a researcher. It's typically affected by different factors, whether that's having already been taught to swim, or having better support, or just being understood as, yes, you are a researcher in training, and so you'll get the support you need. And the impact of that really is that populations who are already marginalized and underrepresented within academia, I believe, will be suffering the greater effect of that. And as I say, this is a theory, I don't have research on it yet, but I think it's a very important part of understanding this education piece. The potential is that if we don't teach this well, we are losing critically important people and perspectives that can contribute to the body of knowledge that is research. So out of our research too, we've really figured out that there are two rough groups of approaches. So some researchers are very structured and process oriented, and others are more unstructured and implicit. Now, of course, there are lots of people who are too new to research to understand which of these groups they fall into, and nothing is as simple as a binary, so there's some nuance and people can be a combination of these things depending on whether they are at a different stage of the project or the kind of project that they're working on. But ultimately, across the board through all of these kinds of research, they need help to make their stuff make sense. That's what we're hearing time and time again. So making stuff make sense is not the technical term. The technical term is sense making, and you can understand sense making to be creating context or framing for data. So there are a few different sense making models out there. The data frame theory is one that we like. It's quite straightforward. And essentially what it's illustrating is that when you have your data, which are in our case, things like the notes that you've created about a source, in order for them to make sense, you need to bring them together in a context. Put them next to each other, draw connections between them, understand them in relationship to each other rather than as individual pieces. So that's really what sense making is about, and that's a very important part of what we see Rebus Ink bringing to the research process. So now we come to the tool itself. So Rebus Ink is an open source workflow tool, and it's designed to support researchers in what we've been talking about, reading and making sense of their collected sources. Now, I often shared this version of our summary because arts, humanities, and social science researchers are really important to our work. At the same time, it is not limited to this kind of research. Our understanding of researcher and research is very, very broad. It's not even limited to academia by any means. This is work that happens all over the place. At the same time, arts, humanities, and social sciences are interesting to us for a few reasons. One is the kind of work that they do, the impact that it can have is something that really resonates with us, that we believe is very important in the world. It's also, I think, observable that these disciplines don't tend to get the same kind of attention and support as, say, STEM. And so it's frankly nice to have the opportunity to really dig in and focus on them. And then finally, of course, the kind of work that happens within these disciplines in terms of research is really resonant with what we're exploring in terms of reading and annotating and sense making. It's that thinking work is of course common to all research, but there's a particular type of it that happens in these disciplines that we're really interested in. And so we tend to prioritize these disciplines if we are selecting people to talk, to speak to, researchers to speak to, but by no means are we limited to them. Okay, so now let's take a look at the tool itself. So the tool is in closed beta right now, and I'll be sharing an opportunity to get involved with that at the end. And so to start, you can do all the things you would expect. You can create and organize your sources. You can read and annotate those sources. Right now we support PDF, EPUB, and copy-pasted content, but I have a very, very exciting idea around a multimedia annotation interface, which I'm hoping to make a reality soon. And I think it's important to note that when we think of sources, it really can be anything. We know that a Twitter thread might be as important to your research as a monograph. So we're not trying to put bounds on what a source is. They can all live here together in a collection because they're all meaningful. Then, of course, you can organize and tag your notes. And then we come to notebooks. Now, notebooks are the first kind of context that you can create. So you can think about it like you have a few sources that are all on a similar topic or that you're reading for a common purpose. All of those and all of the notes you create on them can go into a notebook together. And that could be, you know, you're setting out to write an article on X, or it could be, I've kind of observed this thing coming out of some of the work that I'm doing. Why don't I just start dropping it in here and I'll maybe do something with it later. And then within those notebooks, we have a suite of tools in development to help you draw connections between your notes. Now that might evolve to also include relationships between sources. We could see that as being quite interesting. So I'm going to show you a quick demo of the first of these tools, which is called an outline tool. And I'll talk through it as it plays. So the outline tool essentially is bringing together notes into a linear list that makes some kind of sense to you. So you can add different headers, you can add context-specific notes, so say a connecting thought between two quotes, whatever it is that you kind of want to do. And this version is quite simple. You can move things up and down, and you can kind of get to a point where you have an outline for a piece of writing. At this level, it's, you know, a section, maybe up to a chapter or an article, but certainly we know there are limits on it. And you can bring all of the notes that you have in your notebook into these headings that we've created, or you could just start with the notes and move them around until they make sense to you. Now, the idea is once we get this interaction right, it can be replicated over and over. So you could start creating sections that explore a particular theme or however you want to use it, and then create so many more of them. Where we could go with this is to the level of being able to map out an entire book that you were writing, if that's kind of what you want to do with this. That's, you know, that's a big ambitious goal, but an interesting one we see. So the other really important thing about Rebus Ink is how we're choosing to build it. We're building it in line with open principles, and we do that for researchers because we think there's huge benefit from being able to connect to and contribute to the open ecosystem. There are also benefits for us to work in this way as, you know, as part of a movement, essentially building out open infrastructure for research. So how we do that, we build openly and ethically by doing things like prioritizing user rights and privacy. Certainly when it comes to something like metrics, I have a rule where I say to my developers, you need to be able to look every single user in the eye and tell them why you chose to track that metric. And if we can't do that, if we don't have a good enough reason to tell the user, then we don't need that metric. We also think about user safety and consent. So we have some collaboration features in mind that are being designed very carefully. We look into some of the excellent work that's being done around tech ethics to guide that. We, of course, adopt open practices ourselves, and we leverage existing open tools. We really try to look at what else is out there and what we can do with it. As an organization, we prioritize transparency, and we try to give back to the community and help them understand why and how we're doing our work. And when it comes to a sustainability model in the long run, we're wide open. We don't need to do things the way they've always been done. We're really working to be creative and make sure that it makes sense for the kind of organization and project that we are. So why does all this matter? What it comes down to is that we as a team, as an organization, certainly me personally, we envision a world in which research is accessible to all and used to advance equity, understanding, and the common good. Now that's a big goal, and we will only get there by each doing our part. It has to be a collective effort. There's no one way to create this vision or to achieve this vision. And this is our part. It's the thing we get excited about. It's the thing we believe in. It's what we want to contribute to this broader mission. And by doing so, we believe it will lead to a better, stronger, more equitable knowledge ecosystem in a few key ways. So we believe that if we get this right, we will see more researchers engaging in open practices, including open publishing. We believe we'll see a wider range of researchers participating in knowledge creation. We believe it will contribute to a stronger and more complete open research infrastructure, and that it will create more transparent and accessible research processes, which in turn lead to more equitable generation of knowledge. That's where all this is headed. It's lofty goals, but I can't think of a better way to spend our time, frankly. This is what's important to us. This is why we do this work. And so we come to the end, and now I want to make ink make sense for you. Whether you're a researcher yourself, whether you're a librarian who works closely with researchers, probably both knowing this audience, I want to understand what makes sense in this for you right now. What can it do for you and the researchers you support? So we'd love to start by just talking to you. So there's a link here, and I'll share it in the Q&A afterwards. I would love for you to reach out and book a user interview, just a short conversation to get started. And then from there, we can chat about whether you're interested in doing some usability testing, becoming a beta user, maybe participating in a focus group, whatever it is. We'd just love to start the conversation because we prioritize what people want as we develop this thing. Now, if you're not quite there yet, that's fine. Please follow along on Twitter. You can find us at Rebus Ink. You'll get all the info there. And then I've added my Twitter handle as well if you're interested in reaching out. I can talk about these things for hours, so please don't hesitate. Thank you so much for your time. I really look forward to talking to you all again soon.